viewers. Welcome back to the Nerdy Neighborhood. Welcome back to your Friendly Neighborhood comic show. I am your Friendly Neighborhood by Lauren, and I'm actually joined by another fellow podcaster today who he's done so much work and just everything, but you started with webcomics, which is super fascinating to me. This is Kurt Sasso from 2 Geeks Talking. I only see one geek, so I'm very interested where this other geek could be. Is there a second geek?
Well, technically, and here's that's an interesting way to segue into it. See, we're 2 geeks as it is right now, so technically we're out 2 geeks talking, so it kind of fits.
So I've been robbed of my show without realizing it. This is genius, absolutely genius. Anytime you go to talk on someone else's show, as long as there's you and one other person, your plan is complete.
Yeah, I see world domination. Excellent, Smithers. Excellent.
You should teach Dr. Doofenshmirtz how to figure out those plans, because he can never figure them out. But Fanes and Verbs coming back. That's crazy. I'm so sorry. That's totally random, but
totally did not know that. But thank you.
You didn't? Oh, no. It was just announced like yesterday or maybe over the weekend, and yeah, like the people like the voice Vegas and stuff, they like confirmed it and everything. Like, yep, we're coming back, and it's 2 seasons with 20 episodes each. Like, that's pretty wild.
Jeez. Especially with animation too, or claymation, if they're still doing that. I forget what style they're using these days for that.
And Fanes and Verbs animation, at least. So okay. I think they'll probably do similar, if not the same thing they did before, I'd imagine.
Nice. Awesome. Well, hey, something to watch along with my other massive list of Netflix things that I haven't touched in years. So.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how everything has, just there's so much content, and yet there's so much that is being either lost in the case of HBO Max, for example, or it's being canceled in the case of Netflix. And I mean, again, you started out with webcomics. How on earth did you go from webcomics into all this other stuff, like the TV and the film, and everybody screaming on Twitter nowadays?
That I'm still wondering about that myself, because I think for me, when I started the show back in 2008, if people can remember that far back, I can't remember what I had for breakfast. But when it comes to the show itself, really, it was about, I was helping a good friend, Phil Frump. He was creating a online webcomic database, webcomics.com, which was originally webcomics.com, actually, before he sold it to Brad Geiger from the Half Pixel crew. Great guy, by the way, amazing talent as well too, and wonderful podcast. But I said, you know what, we have this huge database of webcomic people. Why don't we just interview them? It'd be so much easier just to do a podcast.
Yeah.
And he's like, sure, go ahead. And I'm like, okay. So I had no knowledge on how to podcast, what technology to use, how to even get guests for that matter. Everything I was doing was flying by the seat of my pants. And we made it to, like, usually 10 episodes in is when a lot of shows just stop.
Yeah.
And we made it to 100, 200, 300. We made it to over 1,000 plus, and I've lost count since then. But
crazy.
Plus in 15 years is pretty amazing. But it was the start of interviewing these amazing, talented webcomic people like Laura Innes and Brad Geiger and Scott Kurtz and all these other talented people that we all know and love back in the heyday of webcomics. So it was just a natural progression. And back then, I used to do 2-hour shows. It was just crazy.
Yeah.
Just walking with people continuously. I don't know how I survived.
It's kind of crazy, because the way you just described, like, starting it and not knowing what you're doing, and just like this random idea, and your buddy said, okay, cool. And you're like, what? Like, this is actually okay to do. Like, that's kind of, I feel like that's how a lot of these things are formed. Like, that's how I got involved in podcasting, a similar situation. That's how I now do a Nightcrawler podcast, a separate thing with my friend Lisa. It's just all about Nightcrawler from the X-Men, and people listen to it, and we're just like baffled every week in the best way possible.
Hey, he's my second favorite Kurt besides myself. So there you go.
Yes, let's go. Double the Kurt. We're gonna have to steal you on Simply Amazing then. Even if you don't know much about Kurt, that's fine. You can just talk about he's another good Kurt.
That's all I'm going to segue into. It's just, hey, it's another good Kurt. Cool, I'm out.
It's perfect. Listen, we can make a 30-minute episode all about that. I swear, Lisa and I, that's Lisa's favorite thing to do in general, is just connecting anything to Nightcrawler. Literally just the craziest thing you think of, she'll connect it back to him within like 3 attempts.
6 degrees of separation with Nightcrawler instead of Kevin Bacon?
Essentially, yes. Cool. Essentially. But yeah, no, it's so fun for me, and I really appreciate you just sharing these things about your own podcasting, because 15 years, I mean, even just in terms of how podcasting has changed since you started, in terms of all the technology, all the social media. I mean, what did you first do when you started your podcast? How did you like record it? How did you distribute it? Because I have no clue what podcasts were like 15 years ago.
So 15 years ago, you had to do a couple of different things. One was either you had to use Skype for strictly audio podcasting, because video quality back then was not great, because you had DSL connection, you had 6 megabyte connections, you had, if you were lucky, cable was just getting started back then as well too, so 10 megabytes and up. And if you're really unlucky, like I had dial-up way back when. And so I went from dial-up to DSL after about halfway through my actual show. So yeah, I know, crazy. So horrible audio quality. First off, you had to use either Skype, or what I used to use was TalkShoe, which was the host actually of the original podcast. So all of my shows were hosted there, and they were linked to iTunes when iTunes got into the online streaming services back then. And then about, I don't know, 8 years or so ago, they deleted my entire archive off of TalkShoe. So that was almost 1,000 episodes. Or at least 600 episodes were gone there. Luckily, I still have a hard drive and a backup of everything. So I am eventually going to be restoring the original series online on our actual podcast, which I brought back, which was 2geeks talking.podbean.com. So there you go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now you have me like getting ready to rush back and back up everything, because
yeah, like literally I have, I don't know how many terabytes of hard drives literally for just backup purposes alone, just because you put so much effort and time, not only in interviewing these people and showcasing their talents, but it's also the editing that you do as well too, and the quality that you're trying to put together so that future generations can see, what these people were like way back when and when they were at their most creative. And it's even worse with social media these days, because especially with the Twitters and with all these other platforms that are currently available, you have under 5 seconds, 10 seconds to get someone's attention. And the massive amounts of people that are doing shows like ours and shows like, more popular shows than ours, they're constantly overshadowing what we're trying to put out there and produce. And it's a struggle where you can get very downhearted and depressed and distraught with, am I reaching the people I want to reach? Are they going to see what I put my time and effort and years into, especially fine-tuning questions and getting them on and scheduling and all the back-end stuff that definitely occurs that a lot of people just don't realize. They think it's, oh, hey, can I come on your podcast? And away I go. Well, no, I need your images. I need your contact information. Who else are you going to bring? Like, here's my Calendly link where you can schedule yourself. Oh, by the way, can you actually promote the interview as well as the person that was on? Will you promote the interview? That's the other thing. And that's what's a struggle too. So there's a lot of things we can touch on. Whatever you'd like to dive into, I can ramble on about anything.
No, and you're absolutely right. Like, I think a lot of our fans, or fans is so weird to say, because like, again, I am very small, like smaller than you, and rightfully so. You've been doing it 15 years, my goodness. But this channel is so much smaller, and it's like, calling people fans, it's like, no, I'm not that big. Do not put me on that pedestal. I'm just here. Like, I give content out, I guess. Like, even calling myself a creator is weird to me. But you're absolutely right. There's so much that goes into it. And especially one thing that's been more of a struggle, especially as social media has come out and all these things, is, I feel like I have to almost like do background checks on people. Because people are like, hey, I want to be interviewed, or hey, I've got this person for you to interview. And then, you're like, yeah, that sounds great, because you just want to have great people on. You want to showcase their work. But then you realize that they're part of something that you think is morally wrong or what have you. And it's like, I wish there was an easy way to do that. Like, to easily just check, like, cool, looks cool, good to go, or absolutely not, like, I'm gonna pass. Like, keep doing your thing, but I'm over here.
Yeah, but it's tough. I mean, I've had interviews where I've actually interviewed the person, posted it, and then I learn a week later, month later, that they're pieces of shit. Pardon my expression, but I have to delete all that time and effort I took to not only promote them, so I'll delete all of my Twitter posts and social media posts about it, but I'll also delete the episode itself. So all of that 6-7 hours I put into editing it and getting it ready and getting it prepped and, you know, doing the standard amazing work that I do, because honestly, what I put together is a very tight edit. You know, it's very disheartening that stuff like this happens. And I've had to be a lot more vigilant with some of the people that come on the show, because you're right. It's those types of groups that I've done this for 15 years. You don't have a place on my show, plain and simple. I don't care if you submit a scheduled interview. I will look at it and then I'll say, sorry, you just don't fit. And it's only happened not only a handful of times that I can safely say that. And you know, you bring up any posts on social media about this type of stuff, you immediately get like backlash. And it's like, if you don't realize what the show is about and what I put together and who I support and who I don't, then why are you even attempting? I just like, I want to support creative, talented people, plain and simple.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you bring up too, is like, you know, when people, you know, watch and listen to our podcast and we try to create content that not only we enjoy making, but people enjoy, you know, watching or listening to in some way, shape, or form, you'd think they get to know us too, even though there's only so much we choose to show, right? We choose what we want people to see of us and hear of us, but at the same time, they're still seeing a lot of us. So if we're doing what they want us to do and what we try to do, which is to be authentic and genuine while still protecting ourselves and all these other things, then you're absolutely right. They should know, like, there's no way that guy's going to well on. Even if you disagree with my point of view on this person, you'd still like to hear from them. You're not going to get it from me. You can get it somewhere else if you'd like, I'm sure, but it will not be from me. And I don't have to participate in that. And they don't have to participate as listeners if they have to.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny. It happened kind of a little more recently. And it wasn't even so. The interview I did was fine. The guest was fine, no issues whatsoever. But there was a person from that side of things that was like, "Well, X, Y, and Z happened, and I'm looking for answers and blah blah blah." And I'm just like, I just want to get questions as to if you've used this guest's services. I don't care about all this other stuff that I have no knowledge or comments about whatsoever. Like I just want to have a good interview. I don't need this extra background stuff that is going to affect my mood when I start to interview this guest if that was the case, you know. And it was just look, I am a pretty simple guy. Talk with me about your creative project, as long as, you know, our morals don't clash and you're a good person and you haven't done anything questionable in the past. Let's have a great chat. Let's promote whatever project you're doing. And let's have a good time and see what I can do to help promote you on whatever platform I have. Right.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that, because at the end of the day, like, and I've said this to multiple people, I don't do this, and it doesn't sound like you do this to get our own glory or whatever. I mean, you've been doing this 15 years. You completely know how all this all works. We do it to help people. And so when we're trying to help people and we can't provide the help we're trying to provide, then that's where we go in a different direction, I feel like. So if I get somebody that has very questionable morals and stuff, I can't help you promote your work at that point. Like I lose, my job cannot be done at that point. So I have to say no, because I'm not gonna be able to do a job you want me to do. And that just happens.
It is what it is. I mean, like if they are just trying to find a platform, there are many other channels and sites that are definitely geared towards whatever they're trying to do. And that's not what I want to do, and that's definitely not what you want to do. So, you know, that's my line. If people don't like it, hey, I'm on social media, message me, whatever. I don't care.
Right. I feel like it's a never ending process of learning, because just when you think you get it, you don't. Because I mean, even people that they do currently get it, like they have millions of followers, they're very successful, something will come up whenever it does, whether it's tomorrow or a couple weeks or a couple years, and it's going to completely throw them off. and what they are doing isn't working. Like I know TikTok was huge and, you know, messing with a lot of YouTubers. You know, they're still successful YouTubers, but TikTok, I mean, has blew YouTube out of the water. Like,
yeah, and that's the problem with long form content as well too. We don't fit that type of mold, so we're forced to shorten amazing content that we have down to a minute segment, and that's tough. That is tough from an editing perspective. That is tough from a visual perspective, because now the person's head's jumping all over the place.
Right.
You know, you have to add in the text afterwards as well too for readability. You have to then promote it in 150 characters. That will draw someone's attention, including hashtags as well. Thank God there's Chat GPT for a lot of that stuff. It saves my life on a lot of things. So it's less work I have to worry about, just copy paste. But this has been the struggle where I've had to change my format from my hour-long segments I used to do for the original show, because I have two shows. One is the rapid fire segment, which is a quick 15-minute interview, and the main show itself was an hour. But I've in 2023, I'm behind on editing like 3 episodes from last year. I'm working on that. I'm getting better with that. They will go out this year, but I cut it down to a half hour. A half hour is a nice tight timeline that I can safely edit and safely get it out there, and it's not as much rendering time, etc. There's a lot of little things, but it's clean.
That's one thing that I still struggle with is especially for like the live shows and things like that. How can you have a show or an episode, whatever, where you can have a pretty good time limit that you can keep, but you also allow the show to evolve as organically as it does. So if you have guests on the show and they want to talk more about something, but you only allowed it this much time for it, now
let it go.
Right, exactly. So you know, it sometimes feels like you know, I'm letting go of a lot of things, but I kind of figured, you know, in the end I stopped finding it because I was like, well, if it's giving people content that makes them happy and they're enjoying it, then who am I to fight it? If it's a little more extra work for me, extra time for me, that doesn't matter as long as people are enjoying it. Now, if people weren't enjoying it, then I would definitely question it more.
But I mean, it also comes back to who the guest is and what value they are bringing, like you said. But it comes down to, if someone gets on a great train of thought, I'm not stopping that show. I don't care if my half hour was the limit. I mean, that's always been flexible in my opinion. But if there's a guest like a Phil Folio or something like that has 40 years of experience in the comic industry and was one of the very first ones to transition from traditional comics to web comics, you know, I'm going to pick that brain. I'm going to make sure that, hey, how did you do that? Why did you do that? What value did you learn from doing that? And who did it piss off, which was the publishers and all that stuff. You know, little things like that. And you'll get comedy tidbits that you can use in TikTok, and you'll get little things like, you know, how did he get involved with Magic the Gathering? I'm just using that as an example because he was one of my very first interviews back in 2008. He was like episode 10. So a 14-year gap happened from episode 37 technically, and episode 10 he came on twice, and 14 years later he saw another interview I was on because I said I'd love to interview Phil again. He's like, so I heard you want to interview me again. So I got a message from him like, yeah, sure. Here's my availability. What's your availability? Let's get it done. And we did. It was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's nice too to have people that you can kind of fall back on, because they're always, like, at least in my experience, there are always guests, like, you know, especially every guest is grateful to be on, and they're like, yeah, this is really cool. But there are always a certain guests I feel like that they actually really they latch onto the show, or they at least they'll come back to it. Like, it stays, even if they're not always thinking about it or tweeting about it or whatever, it's in the back of their mind, and they revisit it. So that's really cool to hear that. And I really appreciate guests like that, where they are actually as actively invested as they can be, despite that they've got 200 things in their life that they're doing and probably, you know, obviously trying to promote and work on. They're like, all of a sudden, I believe in your thing. And it's like, why? I mean, thank you, but like, how and why? Like,
well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I have a long running kind of a gag, really, and it's a gag off of the Saturday Night Live, like the Five Timers Club from way back when it was like in the 80s or whatever. So I've technically the same thing for Two Geeks Talking, and I have a running it's what is it now? 6 or 7 interviews not in a row, but they've been on the show 6 or 7 times, and it's Trevor Mueller and Dirk Manning, and they've been battling each other back and forth for the top spot for at least 10 years now. And it's just been like, so I keep tweeting, it's like, who's going to take it this year? You know, like let's see who gets it. I think Trevor's signed up for his 7th or whatever, so we'll see what happens.
That's amazing. Now you're giving me an idea. I'm about to just casually tweet out. So this is the person that's been on the show the most. Who wants to try to top it this year? I feel like that'd be a lot of fun. There's we've had one guest here on the show, Marcus Nasso, who is the writer for By the Horns, which got like a bunch of the awards of their award show that we did this year, which was super cool. I was super thrilled for them, the entire team. But he's like playfully competitive. Like when he first came on, like he had seen the show before, and he's like, cool, so are we doing a game? And I was like, actually, I didn't plan a game for this episode, but I can pull one out. I have one sitting if you want it. He's like, yes, bring it out. I want the game. So, and he won the game. So now he's like, has to be the champion of everything, which is hilarious and fantastic. So now you're giving me great ideas.
Yeah, it's happenstance, you know, try to make sure that they at least come on just once a year. Because if they come on more than once, sometimes it feels like a bit of a burnout, even though they're amazing and talented. Yeah, it's just mentally sense. For yourself, I think it's like, okay, I've had this guy on, or person on rather. What else can I ask him? You know, it's just like my wells running dry. Luckily, I have like 300 questions in a document or something somewhere that I pull from, depending on the type of guest I have. So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I want to go back because one thing I'm very much fascinated by is, like you started your pod with webcomics kind of at the, one of the peaks of them. What made them your first love? Because it seems like, again, out of all the entertainment stuff, that's the one that stuck in your brain.
Well, wow.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
This is why I edit my own show, so I can cut that stuff out. No, for me, like webcomics was a true first passion of mine, because I was never a traditional comic book reader, as weird as that may be for a geek. But I mean, back in my early WoW days, I was playing with a clan guild, I should say, out of the West Coast. And Phil, the same Phil that did webcomics, asked me one day while we were raiding something or whatever. I mean, this is decades ago. And he's like, do you like webcomics? I'm like, yeah, sure. I love webcomics. I read, Control-Alt-Delete and Penny Arcade and PvP and all this other stuff. He goes, well, I got a list. Well, this list was over 4,000 webcomics long, categorized. And I'm not joking. It was categorized by when it was released, what days it was released. If it was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, if it was a Tuesday, Thursday only, if it was daily or whatever. He had it all categorized, and he gave it to me. And it was between that and the webcomic database that he was putting together that I was like, okay, we have these contacts, we have this information, we have to do a show, we have to do a podcast, and we have to interview these people. And it was just, it's amazing to see who's still around from way back when, and who's new to the scene these days. And I think a lot of the people that I know, and it's kind of funny because I'm doing this recently. I was going back through my YouTube videos, updating descriptions and titles and everything like that. And I happened upon a couple where it was a manga magazine.net, which turned into Inkblots or whatever, is no longer around. But that was a 10-year ago interview that I did that was like, well, there's some interesting content here that people should see. So I reposted it. There's other webcomics that I had interviewed on episode 1, which was Trying Human by Emmy Bittner. And she's still around. And there's other comics where they've either evolved artists or writers or whatever, and they're still ongoing as it is. And there are some where the creators have passed away, unfortunately. And so there's, that's another piece of history that is no longer available anywhere else but what we have on the show. And it's amazing and sometimes sad to see who's still around, but it's still amazing content and people who live their lives creatively, and I'm glad that I've been a part of it.
Yeah, I think that's hard. You know, imagining like, oh, like we did this, you know, I did this episode, this person, and they're just not there. Like, you can't have them come back once a year. You can't, like, that wouldn't work very well. I mean, you could try to stay on, but I don't think that would work very well.
Just like my dial-up connection, the DSL connection, it wouldn't be very good. So
no, not at all. Gosh, I still remember like dial-up when I was a kid, and I would try to sneak on late at night to play RuneScape. Of all things, RuneScape was apparently worth risking the dial-up, waking up the entire house.
And you couldn't mute that either until about 5 years after.
I don't even know how to. I never knew how to mute dial-up. I can't think of how I ever tried to mute it. It was just one day I still had dial-up, and the next day no dial-up. Like, that's what I thought. It was like a bad magic trick almost.
Older modems or newer modems before they switched to DSL had a switch you could do.
That makes sense.
I was in IT for 20 years, so I did know all that stuff.
Well, there you go. You got this transferable skills. So the podcasting life was natural. You're not escaping computers either way. You're stuck with them.
In fact, I went back to university for a double major in visual arts, communication, media, and film, and I minored in computer science because why not? Be a glutton for punishment.
That is a lot of punishment, but that computer science comes in handy, I'm sure, too.
Yeah, it does. I don't have to call tech support. I can fix my own stuff.
That's true. That's a godsend, because tech support is just the worst. They're always mad at you, which I get, because they probably get people that just don't listen to them or whatever. But man,
yeah, I did tech support for 3.5 years for AT&T, Uverse, and Lenovo. So I learned a lot about human nature.
That is the nicest way of putting, like, humans are terrible, and, you know, condensing it from that sentence.
Yeah. Well, the best call I ever had, and this is just a brief segue, you can cut it, do whatever, but it's literally, I had a person from Jamaica who lived in the States, and he was very angry, but his voice was so soothing. And I just like, sure, I'm sorry you're mad, but man, you have a really good voice.
That's fantastic. Was it like a super deep voice or something? Like, what was so nice about it?
It was like Bob Marley. It was like that style.
Cool.
Yeah.
But angry? I can't imagine that. That's wild.
Well, the Jamaican version of angry is just slightly upset. So, I mean.
That's amazing. I'm just trying to imagine that now, and it's not working, but I know I would enjoy it. That's as far as I get with that thought.
Yeah, exactly.
I would enjoy it. Yeah, I know the last time I had to call, like, technically IT, but it was like Spectrum or something, because Spectrum has a monopoly here, and I need them to stop. Like, Google, stop allowing this. I'm tired of you all. But the lady, I don't remember her name, but she was like the most helpful person I've ever spoken to on the phone. Like, she knew what she was doing, and she was super nice, and she was super patient with the frustration. And I was like, you should be doing a different job. Like, what are you doing here? You are clearly too good for everybody. So shout out to IT people out of nowhere. We know you're doing your best usually. But I wanted to ask, Kurt, because again, you've been doing this 15 years, which is insane. Like, that's like almost half my age. That's crazy. That's how young I am. How do you what drives you to keep running these podcasts and everything, even when stuff might get hard and when it's exhausting like it is, or you lack inspiration or motivation, what have you?
Well, the good news is I don't lack inspiration because the guests I have on the show, because I don't know who they are unless they've been on the show in the past. And so it's a new person every interview for the most part, unless they've been on the show. Right. It's a new person, a new experience, a new challenge to pull information from them that is entertaining, and to make sure that they talk about what they're passionate about, which is comics, TV, film, music, or video games, whatever industry they may be in. And there's things that I learn about them that maybe research didn't pull up. You know, a lot of comic people are music people as well too. I never realized that. You know, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But you can oh yeah, I've been in a band for 15 years. Well, okay, now we got to talk about that. Like, this is interesting, you know. And
Yeah.
and then it's the burnout factor does happen. I mean, that's why I've cut back on the show itself from an hour down to a half hour. The 15-minute segments for Rapid Fire were just a spur of the moment because I was getting flooded with interview requests. I was getting flooded with people saying, hey, I have a Kickstarter or I have a crowdfunding campaign.
Right.
I want to be on your show. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try this, see what happens. And then I get 50 people for these things, which I edit the same day as well, too. And I release the same day. So shorter interviews were easier for me to do. And it worked out. You know, you hit the key points, you get them to talk about their campaign, talk about their challenges and struggles and what they want to accomplish from, you know, being successful in a crowdfunding campaign, obviously to promote their product. And it is what it is. I mean, this year I've also, because I've been doing this for 15 years, I've had to ask for help and I've had to start charging for episodes as well too. So $25 US to get a paid advertisement in essence, where you're promoting your product on the show. I still have the free version. I have the paid version. You have a choice to select. If you want to support the show, by all means, please do that. And you'll get top priority in terms of release and schedule and everything like that. You're my top priority in getting the episode out. If it's free, I will get to your interview. It will be released this year because of this tighter timeline. But I just need to support myself because it costs me $150 a month for internet. This is Canadian internet. Like, it is
right.
It is a lot of money. And 15 years, I have not asked for a single cent from anyone. And I hate doing this. I really do. It is not in my nature to ask for help. But I needed help. And a lot of people have risen to the occasion this year, and they've been extremely supportive. And I can't thank everyone that has done that method enough. You know, I can't thank you all enough for that. It's really eased my mind and eased my financial burden that I have. And I thank everyone for that. And I still thank people who sign up for free as well, because really, without you, without anyone that comes on the show, I couldn't do what I'm doing, and you're still amazing in my book.
Yeah, no. And I totally understand that. I mean, honestly, it's kind of crazy, especially with like comics and the web comics, right? The interviews for those and things like that, because so much, you know, people do that for free. We take the time out of our day. We do the editing. We do essentially what paid jobs are, but we do it for free because a lot of these creators and publishers and things like that, they only have so much money as well, or choose to spend their money in a certain way. So that's something I've asked for a while in my head in terms of like, well, I don't want to charge people ever, right? Like, I'm the same as you. I don't want to, but at the same time, it's a service we're providing, and our goal is to help you. Like, back to what we said at the start of the show, essentially, like just us talking tonight, like, we're here to help you. And that's something that people literally, especially in other industries like film and TV, once you those interviews, you're paid to do that. So I totally understand what you're saying there. And I mean, you know, full speed to you on doing that. I mean, you waited 15 years to do that. That's crazy. Like, I commend you, but I'm also like, my goodness, like, you so deserve to ask for help as soon as you needed it or wanted to, you know?
And in reality, I could have done it at year 10. I should have done it at year 10. It would have probably eased things a little bit, but I don't know what, I don't think there would have been backlash, but I don't think the amount of people signing up would have been the same. And it's just a friend of mine basically planted this idea in my head, and it was a good idea. It's like, look, you're doing this for 15 years. Why are you doing it for exposure? Why are you doing it for free? You know, so I put out a poll. What would be a reasonable amount of money that you would like to pay for your interview to be edited first, posted first at whatever schedule you want, and away we go. I went from $25 to $150. It was 50-50 between 25 and 150. So I took the high road and I said, look, I know comic creators or entertainment people don't make a lot of money. So I went the $25 route. It's the lowest I can reasonably go. If I do 100 episodes in a year, and if people go through the paid route, I'm paid for my internet basically for the entire year.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. That's the only thing I'm getting. I'm not making money off of this whatsoever. This is all going towards my internet.
Yeah. No, and I think, you know, I think that's important for people to realize too, is when people start charging for their content, you know, there are people that unfortunately will just do it because they're like, I just want profit, or I just want like to grow super duper quick and have so much money to do it. But you know, yeah, it took you 15 years and you're just like, look, I just want to be able to pay my internet bill and not be having to worry about it when I'm doing all this. Like that's beyond reasonable, especially if, again, you know, you're going on their schedule and you're giving them a turnaround time just like you would for, you know, any other job you could do within their company, where they would give you those deadlines. That's essentially what you're doing. These people are essentially your clients, and you're producing a product for them. You're giving them a service, and you're doing it on their schedule. You know, like that's amazing that you do that. So I think that's great. And I think, yeah, that amount, like you choosing that high road, I think that's more than reasonable. And I think too, yeah, especially with Kickstarters and stuff, I'm like, look, you can literally just put an extra $25 on your Kickstarter to cover the interview. Literally, just put an extra $25 you didn't plan on putting, put it in the goal, and it'll happen. Like $25 typically, knock on wood, doesn't make or break a Kickstarter in such a way. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I definitely. But like I said, I wanted to give two options: free and paid. Whoever chooses, whatever chooses, it's up to them. Truly, it's not like I'm forcing them to choose any side whatsoever. And you're still going to get the exact same show that's been on the air for 15 years and the same edited content down to make your content look good. Because I know the focus isn't me. The focus has never been me. The focus is you, your product, and your amazing creativity that I want to showcase on 2 Geeks Talking.
Yeah. 100%. That's a beautiful line to like, just a great soundbite to use in like any commercial of yours or whatever. So if you want the soundbite, let me know, because I was just like, interview's done. That's it. That was the whole bite. Nothing else is needed there. But I did also want to ask too, because you know I've asked a lot about the webcomics and such. You know, what outside the webcomics, do you have a like one, you know, kind of group that you are, you know, or your favorite venture to expand into in terms of like, you know, traditional comic books or film or TV or video games? Do you have like something else that like, you're like, that's my niche. That's the other thing. Like if you pick a top 2, you know, things to interview about, what are usually your favorites? I think films are interesting because I went to school for that type of stuff. I was a producer and video. I'm still a video editor and everything like that. And so my podcast got merged into my job. Go figure. I didn't plan on that whatsoever. But I think talking with film and TV actors, directors, producers, like the entertainment industry as a whole is an amazing, diverse, you know, plethora of content, of amazing people that are talented. And like I've had visual effects, a visual effects person that worked on Supernatural and the new Superman series, and he did a comic as well. Like, I mean, so we touched on comics and the entertainment industry from an area that I didn't really know about, which was visual effects. And it was amazing to see those two different things. So in 2012, like, so while the podcast took a bit of a hiatus, the show evolved into video interviews. So back in 2012 is when I started doing video interviews, and C2E2 in Chicago was my very first ever comic convention. I didn't even go to the Toronto convention. I went to Chicago first. Oh, wow. Which is amazing in itself. So I was there for the first 4 years of that show. And I got to interview like Jill Thompson and a ton of other amazing people as well. And so it was amazing just to see, like, you can interview anyone, no matter if they're a musician or if they work in video games, if they are in comics or in film or whatever. And they all have amazing stories that they can tell. And I'm glad I can showcase them. So look, I love all areas, really. That's why I keep saying that whole tagline of TV, film, music, comics, and video games. Yeah, no, I mean, you bring up a good point is, you know, they all intersect in some way. Like earlier when we were talking, you mentioned a lot of comic book creators and things like that are huge music fans. And that's a correlation I've noticed a lot of lately, just with certain comic book releases we've been getting. Like a lot of comics have a ton of music embedded in a story, or it is the story, like it's about a jazz musician or something. And
Nice.
I mean, the influence, you know, music is having on comics creators and how loud it's getting lately really fascinates me. So I absolutely love that. Like I love, like I even just love seeing movies and like they reference a comic book or a TV show, or comic books talking about a TV show. Like it's always so fun because entertainment at the end of the day is entertainment.
Yeah, it's but it's how we consume it. I mean, are you a person that loves streaming? Are you a person that will doom scroll to your heart's content on social media like many of us do when you realize it's 3 a.m. and you should have gone to bed hours ago? And you know, there are things like, you know, web comics online that I still read. There are things that, you know, I'll listen to, whatever, a YouTube soundtrack of whatever I happen to listen to while I'm editing. And it's just like, you're consuming content and consuming media on such a mass scale these days, and it's only going to get better. I mean, I can't wait till virtual reality comes like the norm. Like that's going to be just mind-boggling.
It is. Well, and I think that's one of the coolest parts of what we get to do when we, you know, interview people and stuff, is that, you know, the people that watch our content, our fans, things like that, they trust us to help them decide what content to consume or to find something new. They really trust us, and they trust our judgment, and they trust the people we bring on. So even if they don't like every person we have on, or every, you know, comic book that we promote, or every web comic or whatever, they still trust us enough to give it the time of day, and a lot of times to still follow up and check it out after the interview and say, maybe I will give it a shot. So I think that's really cool that people, like, they trust us with that, because that, you know, not only is that time that they use, you know, trusting us and the content they might consume because we have this person on our shows, but because, you know, it's a financial thing too. And like you said, I mean, financial stuff has been so just tough on you, just basic, like paying your, you know, Wi-Fi bill, like, and that's not a joke. Internet is expensive. So, you know, the fact that people are willing to trust us with their money and how they spend it, like, it's just such an honor. It blows my mind every day when people are like, I bought this because of you. I'm like, you spent money because I told you to? Like, thank you, but also why? But it's great because it gets, you know, the creators get their content out there to people, and that's what I want. That's the whole purpose of it. Yeah.
Well, and it's great that you can, and I really hate this term. I hate the term influence, because it is such an overused phrase that is really pointless. You are giving your opinion on something. You're not influencing anyone. If you happen to have a fan base, great. You're telling them what you enjoy and what you happen to find amazing and interesting. And if they literally purchase it because of you, then awesome. That's great. But you're just giving it an honest opinion, hopefully, when it comes
hopefully.
to
not everybody does.
Whatever you're trying to promote or I'd say, I was going to say shill, but that's a horrible phrase. So it's like, it's great that you can share what you love and what you're passionate about, whether it's the person you're interviewing or whether it's a product. Like for myself, I just grabbed an actual editing device for my videos to make my life a lot easier, because I was wasting time figuring out shortcut keys, and I just picked something up because I saw another creative friend of mine grab the same device, and it's just like, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. I've seen other people use it, and it's awesome. So, and it's made my life a little easier. I just still have to learn the thing.
Yeah, that's one thing too. The more you try to make things easier, the more learning you still have to do. Like, I can't imagine people that, like, you know, if they're doing podcasts or whatever, but they're still using the same or similar methods to, like, even 5 years ago, like how challenging that must be. And then, you know, even if they've been doing it for a long time, you know, and they finally decide, all right, I'll try something new, how hard or frustrating it can be to do such a thing.
But you also, and this is what comes with experience, especially with editing as well, too. You know what works for you. You know what works for your show. So if you have a constant intro and outro, like what I finally came up with after 15 years, you're going to create that as a separate video file. You're going to throw that in as the intro. You're going to throw your outro in if you have one. Say if you're live say if your live chat didn't go very well, you know, okay, here's my outro, boom, done, finished. It's edited, it's already cleaned up. You know, you find ways to do your title images. I've used a template that I've just cycled the year in the file name like for the past 10 years, and it's worked because it's consistent. It's your visual format, your visual identification really online, and you know, you just look up little things that suit your style, and if you pick these things up and you create whatever you need to create, and it makes your life easier in the long run. It's just a matter of remembering how to spell people's names sometimes.
That's true. Yeah, I usually spell people's names right, but I will mispronounce people's names, and I'm so conscious about that. I hate doing that. I'm like, I am literally so sorry. Like half the time, if I don't know a name, I just won't even try to say it because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna regret even more if I even try. Oh God,
I've done that with a few guests, and rightly so, because it's been, I'll be like, and this is insert name here, and then I'll have them say their name, and I'll just cut that little bit and put it in, and then I'll continue with the rest of my stuff. And it's just like, there we go. I've done everything I can, and I didn't butcher your name. Maybe live, but not.
Yeah, you know, hopefully this is a decent substitute. We'll take it, but
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think you've got a great point too with the whole like, you know, everybody has something different that works for their show. You know, whether they are doing interviews all the time, or they just do interviews every once in a while, or they do something completely different. You know, what works for you may not work for somebody else.
Sorry. I mean, for sure, it's, you find what, like, a lot of people have asked, well, why don't I do live streaming anymore? Well, I used to do that, and I thought it was great. It was amazing. Then you see the viewer count, and it's just like, that's disheartening. So I would rather edit something in post, and I do hate that phrase as well. I would rather edit something to a nice clean interview, because then the podcast sounds good because I've already edited all the audio stuff. Then the video looks good, so the guest looks amazing, and they're promoting what they need to promote and not losing their train of thought, which does happen. I'm sure you know that well as well.
Oh yes.
And so you found something that works, and you're showcasing that, and that gives you great content, and that's just straight and to the point, and makes, you know, the people that are watching this, because no one's going to sit through an hour interview or half-hour interview. You know, at most, maybe they're going to sit through 5 minutes. So make sure you get the best 5 minutes you can, and then put that as a YouTube short or something.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And, you know, people ask that too at times. They're like, well, why don't people do weekly live shows and things anymore? And it's exactly what you said. It's like, look, we don't care about reaching a gazillion people, but we still want people watching it, especially because live shows are so much different than recorded content, just in terms of how you plan it and the fact that it is live. If something goes wrong and it's, you know, you're going 2 hours straight or whatever crazy thing you do for your live show, right? Whereas recorded stuff, you can record and then stop and say, we're going to come back to this. Or, hey, we got 30 minutes to record. Then you've got your editing time, and you can plan other time to do your editing. You don't have to do it right after you record, but live show is all right there. That is exactly what you've got to do. And the whole point of a live show, for me at least, was to interact with people live. That's the whole fun of it, is the interaction. So when you lose that interaction, I lose the whole, the big pro of it, the fun part of it. That's the fun part. So why do it when I can get the same reaction and possibly, like you said, similar or better view count, and it's all good. Yeah.
And when I did my live show most recently about my 15th anniversary, and technically this is like my 15th year. Every August August 8th is technically my anniversary date, because we started August 8th, 2008, which is 888.
At least you know.
That just happened. That was not planned whatsoever. And so when I did the 15th anniversary live stream, because that was like an hour at least, and you know, you miss people's comments. You're trying to talk. I was trying to get people to actually come on the show through StreamYard, no one was coming on. So I'm talking for an hour, answering people's questions. Maybe it was the time I did it. Maybe it was whatever. I don't know. But I had great interaction in the chat. I was answering the questions. Some great guests that came back that, you know, thanked me, etc., and all that other jazz. And it was a fun show, but it's not the same interaction as having a one-on-one guest or one-on-two or whatever the case may be. And it's just like, I love doing it. It's just my format just, I don't think fits that. That's all. I devote my time to these interviews. I devote it to the editing. I try to get it out in a reasonable amount of time. I'm conscious of people that have paid. I'm conscious of people that have Kickstarters. I set rules for myself and limits for myself so that I know if I'm feeling burnt out editing a long interview, that I know I have one I'm currently interviewing where I had 3 people on, but it was 3 separate subjects. So it was at least an hour and a half that I have to cut down.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Into 3 separate interviews. That's mentally draining. That's a lot of time for me to do, but I will get it done. It will get posted. It's just not today.
Yeah. That's really all we can do, because at the end of the day, we're all trying our best. And if everybody remembers that we're all trying our best, then we're all good. It's when we forget that.
I can provide any value, you know, don't burn yourself out, back up all of your stuff, make sure that the guests you have on the show are the people you want to talk with and interview, and really showcase them to the best of your ability. And that's how you'll survive for year after year. That's about all I can say.
I feel you should write those down. Those are like the top 3 tips. Those are phenomenal. Like, honestly, all of those things are things, you know, that I have struggled with just the last year or 2 of doing these things. So I can only imagine how much you've gone back and forth having to process that over, you know, such a much longer time. Like, I can't even imagine. You're like, it's just amazing everything you do, and the fact that you just have so much, you know, patience and dedication to it still. Like, it really seems like you've stuck it out because you wanted to. Because
I love this show. I love what you're doing, and keep up the amazing work. You'll get through it day by day. That's for sure.
Well, thank you. Is there anything, you know, about your show, about everything you do that you wanted to share that we didn't get to?
Of course, I am the host of Two Geeks Talking on Lauren's amazing, you know, comic show, because I can't remember what the whole title is, because this is why the neighborhood.
It's a long name. It's a long name.
But I want to thank Lauren for having me on the Neighborhood Comic Show. I will definitely be back whenever she would like to have me on the show. I also feel that, you know, the Two Geeks Talking show itself, you can find it on our website, kind of, at tgtmedia.com, but you can find it on a YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/C/Two Geeks Talking, or sorry. Damn it, I have to think about that. youtube.com/C/TGT Media. That's what it is. Our podcast is on twogeekstalking.podbean.com. I've uploaded all of last year's 100+ interviews, and I'm currently uploading this year's interviews as well, too. I'll be uploading past content as I can, so look for that there. And of course, we have a link tree with all of our other social medias, which is linktree.com/Two Geeks Talking. That's the word 2, not the number 2. And as I say every week on my own show, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.
That's amazing. The fact that you memorized that all too, like, that's absolutely phenomenal. I love that. I feel like that's the thing. I need better outros and intros. Like, you are a professional. You've got this down pat. Well, again, thank you, Kurt, so much for coming on. I do appreciate it. You all heard his amazing spiel. I feel like that's a rude way of saying it, but it was an amazing monologue. We're gonna call it a monologue. His amazing monologue and pitch. Please go check him out. Go check out Two Geeks Talking and everything they do. I love everything you do, and I love that we have similar values and helping people tell and share their stories. It's super awesome. And those you guys watching, you know, like, share, subscribe, all that super cheesy but important stuff that helps me, and it helps Kurt, of course, on his channel. So please do that. And if you feel like you want to support monetarily, please go support Kurt. I have no way you can do that right now. So if you want to support me, go support Kurt first. And we'll see you guys next time in the Nerdy Neighborhood.